Hi, Pete. Really good to have you on board. So we're basically now doing a range of all the sort of big MIS companies and sort of going back through interviewing people, the CEOs of each of these companies to sort of, I suppose, get a bit of another steer on where the market's going because ultimately so much has changed, so much as the sort of fragmentation of the market has got even more diverse than it has been before. So actually, it's really
Yep.
good to get people like yourself back on board and sort of and start talking to you about what's been happening, especially for
Yeah,
yourself
absolutely.
over the last 2.5 years.
Yeah. Well, it's been great. Firstly, it's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I've watched many a fireside chat, so it's lovely to be on this side of the camera and taking part. So appreciate the invite. It's great. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been a journey. So yeah, as you rightly say, I'm at Compass. I've been here 2.5 years now, coming up for, which has been great fun. And yeah, blimey, we've seen quite a lot change, haven't we? So I think for me, reflecting on it, there's probably two sides of the change that we've seen. I guess the first side is what we see as a vendor in the market, sort of engaging with schools and working with our products and services. And I think the first thing we've seen there is an increase in the level of choice for schools, and that is just a fantastic thing. All of my career, I've been working in and around schools and education technology, and I've always been a firm champion of choice is just powerful. You know, schools are wonderful places and they do wonderful things when they've got choice about how they do what they do and they can exercise that creativity. So that's great. And Compass is still moderately new in the UK market. I probably can't say we're brand new anymore. We're 2 years in, so we're maybe not the newest, maybe not the new boys so much anymore, but we're still moderately new compared to others. And to have been a part of that journey of giving schools choice is really humbling, and we're proud to do that. And I think if you ask anyone in the Compass team, they share that passion of bringing choice to a market that's perhaps not had it quite so much. Certainly going back 5 or 10 years, definitely, it was not there. So that's great, and I think one of the other things we've seen, a knock-on consequence of that really is you increase choice, you therefore increase innovation, and quite rightly, schools therefore increase their expectations of vendors and of solutions and of the market. And that again is a great thing. It's the reason why choice is so powerful, because schools are now looking at the market and they're able to be much more demanding and specific about what is right for them. No two schools are the same, no two classrooms are the same, no two pupils are the same, and so therefore it's impossible to imagine a world where one platform and one solution is right for everybody. So that's a wonderful thing to see.
And can I just ask, in your journey as well? So I think deliberately, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but you really have reached out to the market and sort of tried to really understood what's going on, and so you sort of evolved. And how many schools you got now coming on board?
Yeah, well, so as of a couple of weeks ago, we're very excited to have signed our 100th school
Amazing.
in England and Wales. So that's great. That doesn't include the operation that we've got in Ireland. So across the two of them now, so the region I look after is effectively UK and Ireland. Over 200 schools now and going strong, and more have signed recently since then. So I think you're right. That's, for me, is just a great sign that schools wants to exercise that choice. And yeah, I mean, back to your point, it's probably a fair one, I guess. Compass have come in from a reasonably unique sort of angle, I guess, to some extent, insofar as for those of your audience that might know Compass, traditionally or heritage-wise, we were born out of Australia, so the business itself is best part of 15 years old. We've 3,000 schools globally, so we are a large provider of management systems. So for us, actually, the journey was not starting from scratch. The journey for us was actually, how can we bring some interesting ideas, maybe different ways of thinking, different ways of schools operating? How can we bring the best of that to the market here? And of course, we acknowledge that there's lots of things here that schools need locally. Census returns is the obvious example of that. That's not a thing in Australia. So clearly there's a well-defined spec, and we've got to build tools that deal with that. And that's fine. That's compliance, hygiene, schools need it, expect it, and want it, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the schools that have really engaged with Compass have really resonated with that. Hey, we've got Compass genuinely has a global perspective on what great MIS and school management looks like, and we can now bring that sort of multi-jurisdictional thinking to schools, because you ignore specifics of things like census, things like great pupil behavior management and well-being management are broadly ubiquitous, but pupil behavior is a challenge in every school, in every country, in every jurisdiction. It may have slightly different flavors, but bringing new thinking to that has been incredibly powerful. And I think you're right, schools have really resonated with that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, you're ultimately, because of the size you are and the number of different, like say, jurisdictions or regions or countries, it does enable you to look at, or bring in the best of practices from each of the different countries.
Yeah,
That's really interesting. And,
I
and
think
do you think that's almost your unique sort of differentiator that what you're bringing into the UK?
Yeah, I think it's on the list, absolutely. I would like to hope it's not the only one, of course. I mean, I think for us, I mentioned it earlier, one of the other things that really stands out for us and we're very proud of and resonates with schools is passion. You've got to be passionate about what you do and the impact that you can have on a school, because lots of things impact schools, and MIS is certainly in the top 5, isn't it? I mean, it's the heart of a school. It might not always necessarily be the most exciting platform or perceived to be. It's there to do a lot of administrative tasks, but if it does them well and it does them in a way that's effective and frees up time, that's incredibly liberating, and that time can be used for so many other things. So I think you have to have a team and a commitment to that passion of the impact that you can have on a school. And I've as I said before, I've always worked in education technology. It's a privilege to work in that sector. You can't treat it like you would think about other more business to business sectors. It's not that. It's a passion run sector in my mind. So being able to mirror that with my own team and see them grow has been great. When I started 2.5 years ago, I looked at it the other day actually for a company briefing. I was employee number 10, and we've now got 3 times that. So we've grown threefold over that time, and it's been wonderful to bring in people that you can see share that passion for schools and what they do and the impact they have.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I'm not. I don't think I'm giving or being too biased, but definitely your team. Whenever I speak to them, they're always passionate. They're always, they've always got a smile on their face as well. So that's always a good positive.
And they have to put up with me, so that's a minor miracle.
So I think that, and it just shows how much they care about the sector they're working in, which is a great thing for sure.
Yeah, and I think going back to your earlier question, the final thing that I'd say in terms of what's changed from, I guess, a vendor perspective is the ecosystem of school support units as well. Like that's a really valuable part of the ecosystem, particularly in the English market, Welsh market as well. It's actually not a feature of the market in Australia so much. So that's a unique dynamic here, which we're embracing. And I think, again, for probably all too long, maybe those support units haven't had the choice either. It all comes back to that power of choice. So whilst on the one hand, we're engaging with schools and finding what resonates with them, broadly, it's a mirror image in the world of support units. These are teams that are equally passionate about what schools do. They offer great quality service locally, and they're desperate for choice. It really hasn't been hard to knock on those doors and get some energy into really exciting conversations happening with them, because I think they're just looking out there saying, well, who can we work with? Who shares our passion? Who shares those same values that we have to make an impact in schools? And I think, based upon our experience, a lot of them are looking at those that they've maybe previously worked with and aren't seeing that to the extent that maybe they were. I'm not saying they're not seeing it at all. That would be unfair, but they're not seeing it to the extent that perhaps they once were. And maybe the market's moved on.
Yeah, definitely. I think, there's almost like the same journey for me as schools as well, in the sense of, probably if you sort of went back 5 years ago, there's probably an element of lethargy and a sort of a bit of a sort of concern about change. Change is always a little bit threatening. It also, you worry about the risk of change as well. So what happens if it all goes wrong? Do I lose my data? So I think schools and support teams, I think we're in the based in the same, have probably had the same sort of feelings, I guess, or opinions, in the sense of, do we, if we change, what does it mean to us?
Yes.
And, is it too high risk? And I'm guessing, some of the conversations that you guys have been having, I suppose have aligned some of those, or allied some of those sort of fears, and made sure people are more comfortable about change. And you must have seen that probably gradually happen over the course of the last 2.5 years to 3 years, whatever.
Yeah. I think that's right. On the one hand, it's one thing giving choice; it's another thing schools being able to exercise that choice
Yeah.
confidently, right? So, I think we have seen that. In recent months, there's been quite a lot of noise around how easy or not it might be for schools to get their data from one MIS to another, and I'm not going to get embroiled in that. That's probably a whole nother fireside chat series for you that we need to word very carefully. But yeah, I mean, let's kind of take a step back on all of it. I think we would probably say, and I think my fellow vendors would probably say similar, that switching an MIS is still harder than we would all like it to be. Let's probably declare that. MISs hold a massive array of data, and some of that data goes back 20 years, and some of that data is still highly relevant, actually. So it is undoubtedly a good-sized task to move all of that data. However, what I would say is, schools that are maybe watching this and thinking about switching is, regardless of who you choose, obviously we'd love you to consider Compass, but regardless of who you choose, trust your vendor. We know what we're doing. We've done this thousands of times before. With all sorts of systems, we know how to manage that change process with you. All of us, as far as I'm aware, certainly in the UK domestic market, all of the core vendors offer really comprehensive migration services, training, support, project management, call it whatever you will, but all of those things that wrap around that change management. And okay, we all shape those services slightly differently in a way that we think is best fit for schools. So if I was a school looking at a change, talk to your vendor, talk to them about how are they going to help you manage that change. What does their change management program look like, and does that fit for you and for your school? Because they're all subtly different. But put that challenge and have faith. That as vendors, it's in our vested interest to successfully move you from point A to point B. So trust that process and really engage with your vendor, be proactive with them, be positive with them, work hand in hand. And it's been done thousands of times, and it can be managed. So,
and I'd probably argue from a perspective of will we get everything you need? Then again, it's interesting. I always look at it a bit like the Maslow hierarchy of needs. An MIS is that one at the bottom where you sort of, in fact, in some ways, if you don't ever think about it, and if you don't need to talk about it, it's probably doing exactly what it needs to do.
Yes, yeah. And it's similar for lots of IT, isn't it? I mean, my former life, I was at RM for many years and doing work with schools, selling all sorts of IT solutions, and the mantra there was often like, if it all works, no one ever talks about it, you've done your job well. Because and rightly so, because what should you be talking about in schools? You should be talking about attainment and inspiration and creativity and learning and ambition and all of those things that make a school what it is. You shouldn't be talking about process and blockers and barriers and missing data, and like, you shouldn't be talking about those things. So if we can take that away and make it a non-conversation, then so much the better.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think I think and this is why it's good to have a lot of competition, because I think ultimately, again, you get back to that sort of innovative sort of market where actually where you're having to compete is on the elements of reducing down or creating efficiencies, reducing down the sort of friction that you get from when, to be honest with you, if you have one provider, there's no incentive to basically make systems more efficient than they are, really, and that's not having to go at anyone. That's just how markets are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, any market with a heavily dominant main player is inherently probably not, in the long term, certainly a healthy market. I'm not saying it isn't it isn't like dominant players get there for a reason. That's
Yeah.
fine. But in the long term, it isn't always a great place to be over a sustained period. And I mean, I guess going back to your original question, the other side of change that we've seen kind of resonates with that is obviously what's happening in schools, what's changing for them. And it's lots of the common things that we've seen over the years, isn't it? I mean, it's recruitment of teachers and teaching assistants continues to be a challenge, probably getting worse rather than better. Whether the Labour government policy to recruit teachers and will make a difference on that, who knows? I mean, I don't think anyone would argue that more teachers are needed and would be desperately welcome. I'd actually argue that teaching assistants are also desperately needed and would be very welcome, but I guess that attracts less attention than teachers. But that's there. But budgets are tight. You know, when I'm not wearing my Compass hat, I'm a chair of governors at a primary school federation, and I see directly how tight budgets are. You know, how much there isn't to go around for some of this stuff. So that continues to be a challenge. And then you add to that, I guess, probably what's a slightly more recent trend is pupils with SEND. You know, it spiked during COVID. And that was a lot of, I think, sort of mental well-being and pupils that had really struggled during that COVID period, struggling to settle back into school life for various reasons. But actually, that spike hasn't gone down. Like, and that's a combination of things, of course. On the one hand, it's about diagnosing pupils that have need, and that's a fabulous thing.
Yep.
But I think just, you know, it's just general society is, we all feel it, don't we? There's a lot of things going on in the world, some less positive than others, and pupils feel that they're not in a bubble. They see what's going on around them and the world, and that generates anxiety and worry and pressure and all of those things. You know, we commissioned our own survey on pupil well-being, focusing on pupils in Wales, actually, because that's a particularly pertinent problem for them. And the results are stark. For anyone watching this, there is a report on our website. If you want to go and have a look at it, it's free to download. Just go on Compass and search for it.
Amazing.
But it's really stark, you know, kind of what pupils are saying and parents are saying about their worries for their children.
And do you think when people are looking at them but purchasing an MIS, then that they should, because you know, and we've seen it loads, you know, where basically somebody will go, right, actually we're going to go to the G Cloud. Yeah, does the system do behavior? Does it do attendance? You know,
Yep.
if I'm being honest, all MISs basically will tick the box when it
Yep.
comes to G Cloud, and so they should. Do you think though, when you're procuring a product like an MIS, you should first of all start with all those pain points and the ones that you've been talking about, sort of go, right, how are you going to help me with well-being? That my main problems at the moment are the kids aren't coming to school. Yeah, we've got an attendance problem. We're way below the 95. We're now into the 92%.
Yep.
What will your system help me do, or what will your business help me with?
Yeah.
Probably more of the statement, really. So,
Yeah.
do you think that's more important?
100%, yeah, absolutely. And we love having those conversations with schools because we're helping to solve problems at that point. And that's when you move from being just someone who makes available a piece of software for you to use to someone that actually can help you solve a problem and make the world, that school, a slightly better place than it was before. So yes, I would absolutely encourage anyone looking at MIS to, I guess, kind of acknowledge the hygiene features. You know, you're going to want to do a census return, and okay, you're probably going to want to look at how the platform might do that, but it just needs to be done. Whereas there's other areas, behavior is probably a really great example of it, but it's certainly not the only one, where actually the right platform, again, where choice becomes powerful, the right platform can really make a tangible difference. And I would definitely ask any of your audience, if they're thinking of procuring, ask your vendors how are they going to solve their problems, not what does your product do, because we can happily talk to you about what our product does. We'd far rather talk to you about how we're going to solve your problems. You know,
and it's a much better conversation because it's not a sales conversation as such, is it? It's
no.
much more of a consultative. Can we help you with your key, top 3, top 5 problems that you're facing at the moment? And if we can, then let's get into a conversation around how we do this together.
And there's a longer term dimension on that as well, because if schools are talking to their vendors, whoever that might be, about their problems and challenging them to solve them, that's the core engine of innovation. That's what's going, we as vendors will have ideas, of course we will, but nobody will know our customer better than the customer themselves. No matter how close a relationship you have with your clients, they will still know them better than you will. So I think that dialogue with like, hey, Compass, hey, other vendor, this has happened this week. We've suddenly got this bit of data that's identified a problem. How can you help us with it? That sort of partnering conversation. One of the roles and in departments we've invested in quite heavily at Compass as we've grown in the UK is fundamentally a customer success department.
Yeah.
They're here, they're not in Australia, they're in country, they're here. The majority of them are ex-teachers themselves. They've worked in schools, they've been there, they've done that, they understand the context. Their role fundamentally is exactly that. It's how can you use Compass to solve your problems? What other problems can it solve that you haven't yet thought about?
Yeah, that is really interesting. I like that. So yeah, and do you think and were you constantly well, obviously you will because that's what you're saying. I was going to say, will you constantly then develop the solution based on all the feedback you're getting? And
Yes.
I'm guessing that sounds obvious in some ways when I say
Yeah.
that, but
And,
I
and
don't
it,
think it's always the case. That's why I suppose I'm sort of asking the question.
yeah, and I guess it can be tricky insofar as what as a software vendor, what you don't want to end up with is a platform that only works for a very specific niche problem or segment of the market, because you want choice, and good business practice would suggest you want a platform that's as applicable to all as possible. So I think there is always a balance there between not solving a problem for one, but trying to solve it for many, but actually just using good development practices, good scoping practices, good general industry practice. It's not difficult to identify a problem in school A, but solve it in a way that if school B has a similar problem, it can be adapted. You can
Yeah,
change a setting or a configuration or a workflow, or you can tweak a thing that says, okay, we've got the bare bones of it here, and how each school uses it is slightly different. And broadly, it's the rhetoric that Compass has been built on. Our behavior module is a supercharged version of that. It's one module that is used in a primary school in Ireland all the way through to a college in Australia or a MAT in England. All of them fundamentally use the same module. They use it very, very differently. You almost
yeah,
wouldn't recognize it as a module between those jurisdictions because of how customizable it is. So the premise is the same, great, but the use then is very different. And that's where sort of powerful development comes in, I think.
yeah. And I guess we talk about the future. So there's
Mm.
obviously the future of the market, which we'll come on to in a minute. But I suppose while we're talking about development, is AI really heavily on your roadmap? Is it it feels like lots of people talk. Well, I'm going to be really, really frank here. I think lots of people have been talking about it for a very, very long time.
Yep.
Sometimes you look at AI and go, it doesn't feel like 100% AI. That sounds like you're utilizing the name rather than anything else. And I was actually talking to somebody yesterday where
Mm.
AI is such a broad subject actually, and just
Yep.
putting the badge of AI on can sometimes be a bit misleading. You've got generative AI, you've got data science, you've got robotics, automation. All these things are part of AI, and actually, I
Yeah.
think sometimes we need to describe it better. Probably, actually, going back to your point regarding pain points, this is the pain point we're solving. This is where we're adding more
Yeah.
automation. This is where we're doing data science or whatever it might be.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely. As anybody in the tech space, AI has to be on your roadmap. Probably has to be on everyone's roadmap, and particularly so for those in the tech space. So yes, we've been working on it for quite a while. I think for us, you're right. We have a note of caution around AI. It certainly isn't a silver bullet that fixes loads of things. I think it has a place for sure. Um, at a very high level, I think its place is primarily in the sort of automation of administrative tasks. And I think, like to your point, that there's maybe sometimes a fine line between what is AI versus what is just well-designed automation,
Yeah,
actually. And a really well-designed automation can feel like AI because it broadly achieves the same sort of thing. So I think you're right. There probably is maybe a blurring of marketing speak around what's AI versus what isn't. So, but let's not get drawn into that. Let's lump them all together for the moment. So for us, I think, and actually, in fairness, similar to some of our of other vendors in the market, you look at what others are doing. and actually credit to them. I think they're using AI in probably the right ways. It's a logical way. They and us will be looking to deploy it in ways that removes time from time consuming tasks, but where the time isn't adding value. So automation of communications, automation of absence notifications, or helping to do a first draft of a school report for a pupil. So pulling data from across a platform and using generative AI to provide a verbal narrative to
Yeah.
that, to summarize it in plain English, so that a teacher can then do a review rather than having to write it from scratch. So I think that's where it's most powerful for now. Um, my personal opinion, very personal opinion, is I've always been a bit wary of AI platforms that are at the teaching end of the spectrum. So those that say, hey, hand your pupil to us for X hours a week, and AI will take over and we'll teach them maths, or we'll teach them English, or we'll teach them phonics, or whatever it might be. I'm sure they're great platforms. Instinctively, I have a bit of a challenge with it because all of the research says that the teacher is the most important and powerful thing in someone's learning.
Yeah.
And I think if AI can make that teacher better by giving them more time to spend with their pupils, or by giving them greater insights about the pupils that are in their classroom, that is an amazing use of AI. If that pupil goes into a different room and sits in front of a computer for an hour and is not with their teacher for that time, I'm less convinced that that is a great use of AI. But that said, if that time can then generate data, maybe. But I think Compass is not in the art of doing the teaching side, so we'll kind of leave that to others. But I think for us, automation, admin tasks, those things that just free up time is going to be the focus.
Yeah, I think that sounds sensible from my perspective. I think the use of your data, I think that might be quite interesting. I think
Yeah,
the one thing that MISs do have is abundance of information and
yeah,
data, and
yeah,
I think there must be some trends to sort of extract from that. Or I suppose you get to a point where either some company or yourselves create an umbrella across all sort of systems, in the ecosystem, I guess, in a
yeah.
school. But that
Yeah,
would be a lot
I
harder.
think all of us have sort of various versions of that, don't we? I mean, and nearly all vendors will have APIs that move data in and out, and third-party systems. And actually, we're seeing quite a big consolidation of third-party systems
Mm.
in schools, and that's good because it by and large saves a bit of money. It's also good because it brings the data into one place. So in that sense, like bringing it all into one platform is good from that perspective. I'm not saying that every school should do that. There are some really amazing third-party apps out there that are absolutely perfect for certain schools. So again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. But for those that are able to consolidate platforms and it's the right thing for them, that increases that power. We're seeing an increasing trend of schools who use our analytics wanting to combine and overlay very different data sets than they were before. So whereas I guess data analytics V1 in schools was just plotting attendance over time and seeing, well, particular pupils, which of those have good attendance or poor? Is it a class? Is it a year group, etc.? So good start, but the basics, what we're now seeing is schools say, okay, I want to take that data, but I actually want to overlay it with maybe behavior data. I
Yeah.
want to overlay it with attainment data. I want to overlay it with demographic data and cut it in any number of different ways to form a really full picture of actually, I've got some pupils here that are struggling with attendance, but there might be a reason why. There is probably much wider context to what's going on for that child or for that family. So bringing in those other data sets really helps to, I think, add color to that sort of analytics. So that now, I mean, almost every school is wanting to do that to some level of maturity. And obviously maths as well. They do it at an aggregate level. It's the same.
Yeah, I agree. I think that can easily go a step further where, and again, it comes back to helping and supporting teachers because I agree. I think, I don't think it's about taking over from what teachers do. They do an amazing job and actually they're probably as innovative in their approaches and having to be as any software vendor. But I think there is this sort of element of, again, supporting them where, if you are in a mat or if you're or even if we had a national sort of data, you could get to the point where you go, actually, this child is in the same demographic. Have you thought about these interventions regarding attendance or behavior or whatever it might be? And I think the more that we can utilize data to support and inform, I guess, teachers of different interventions and success and and trends and how those trends can materialize, into what the risks of those trends might materialize into, or even the positive side. We always talk about the negative, but actually there's a positive side about things as well.
Yeah, absolutely right, absolutely. And I think as you touched on there, that's another, maybe not emerging, because I think it's been around for a little while now. Some have done it for a few years, but it's certainly increasing in popularity. Is that sort of predictive analytics? There's one thing which is let's look back at what happened and see how we might prevent it or improve it for the future. The other thing is saying, well, actually, let's look back at what happened, but then let's model that for the future. What happens if we do nothing? What happens if we do this intervention? What happens if we do that intervention? What happens if we combine them? So that sort of more advanced data modeling, predictive analytics, sort of showing those impacts. So one of the things that Compass has updated recently, it's been a module we've had for a while, but updated recently, is the interventions space. So adding a lot more into that module to kind of ultimately capture the data that you're going to need to do that kind of prediction. So when you plan an intervention, making sure you do record the time it took, the money it cost, the impact that it had, over what period of time, what pupils were involved, and does it make a difference if that pupil is pupil premium versus a pupil that's already working at greater depth? And building up that data set, is quite powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, well, we've probably touched on some of it already. I'm quite interested to understand your views on, so where do you think if we talk about the next 3 to 5 years, what do you think the shape of the market will look like? But also, where do you see Compass in that market? And also what things, so obviously I'm not suggesting you have to give us all your confidential information, but what are the things that Compass are going to do to basically help shape that market that you expect to happen?
So let's start with what we think, what either we're seeing or we think might happen sort of in the market itself from a school's perspective. So new Labour government, nice and shiny, and honeymoon period, probably not for very long, but they've got one. So they've got some education policies. I don't think it was a massive feature of their election campaign, certainly not as against previous campaigns from them. But they're talking about more teachers. They're talking about VAT on private school fees. They're talking a lot about nurseries in primary schools, so expanding that sort of not wraparound care, but that age of provision in primary settings. Obviously, have had for many years now. It's far from new, but the academies movement and multi-academy trusts. Labour traditionally were never on board with that, but they're not going to unwind it. It's here to stay. So I think that dynamic is accepted now. So I think that will generate some trend. I mean, and hopefully, I hope some of these policies are a success. More teachers. No one would argue that that's a bad idea. So bringing those in, that's great. As I said before, I think actually more TAs should also be a focus, because they do amazing work, and are often overlooked. So with all of that said, some of those policies need to kind of flesh out. I mean, hey, it remains to be seen what happens in terms of the independent space and VAT, and whether that provides any level of influx into the state system. Bums on seats means more money, so that's a dynamic. Maybe schools will be net beneficiaries of that a little bit, and that's so good. And that's what Labour want to happen, right? Because that's what the teachers are going to be needed for, and all that good stuff. So I think that's all happening. I think with academies and academy trusts, my impression is that the large ones may not get much larger. I think there's probably a sweet spot of size, where some of the larger ones are really operating at now and doing that very well. I think we'll probably see fewer and fewer smaller mats. So those that have sort of started on their journey, like the 1, 2, 3 school mat. I suppose you can't have a 1 school mat, but 2, 3 school mats. I don't think they will last like that for very long, and either because they'll be really successful and they will grow and they will acquire other schools, or we're seeing an increasing pace of sort of amalgamations and mergers between those sort of small to medium sized mats to give them that scale. And I think, I mean, what's driving that? It's lots of things. Money is probably one of them. That you know, and my own schools, where I'm chair of governors, we federated for exactly that reason. You know, we were two small rural primary schools. We couldn't afford to be two rural primary schools. We had to strengthen numbers. We had to combine. So I think with budgets continuing to be tight, we will see schools aggregate together more. And the MAT model is probably the more common one that they will aggregate around. I don't think we will see MAT v2 or some other weird policy come out. Labour haven't really talked about much about that. So I think all of that is going on. I think we'll continue to see high levels of SEND, high levels of pupils that need some level of specialist support, and that's actually great, because often these things wouldn't have been diagnosed, and pupils will need that. So I think we'll see that. In terms of then of us, Compass, what are we working on? Behaviour management, well-being, I think will continue to be a very large feature for us, both for pupils and actually for staff as well. So I think staff well-being in schools is challenged because of all the pressures, time and budgets and etc. We know all of that. So you know, we're looking quite hard at the minute of actually, we spend a lot of time talking about pupil behaviour well-being tracking. Well, actually staff are in our platform as well. They're users of our system. So what can we do more around them to sort of help with that?
And actually, if sorry to interject, I think that's also it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because they want to drive, you know, over 5,000 more teachers into the market, but you've got to retain them as well.
Yes.
Yeah, otherwise that number just gets bigger.
Otherwise,
so, sorry.
Yeah, for sure. So I think we will see, certainly from Compass's point of view, I think we will see investment and features and things come out that look perhaps a little bit more about internal well-being for staff and that side of the ecosystem. Parental engagement will continue to be key. You know, we've got apps, that's fine. They're pretty standard these days, but I think we'll see continued investment in that side of the platform, so that sort of outreach community side. I think as well we'll also see some quite significant movement in, I guess, other periphery parts of the ecosystem. So how do we support schools generating revenue? So budget's tight. So developments around how we can make it really easy for school to let their buildings and rent out their spaces, run clubs, run trips, run wraparound care, much of which happens now, but just making that easier and smoother. Schools that want to run their own shops to buy uniforms and pencils and branded things and all that kind of stuff. So I think we'll see that. We're also looking at sort of supply teaching. So that's schools spend heaps and heaps of money on supply cover. So is there something that we can do within our platform that makes that sort of exchange easier, smoother than it is now, makes that sort of market a bit more not commoditized, because teachers are absolutely not a commodity, but when you need a supply teacher, you need them fast. That going to a sort of competitive marketplace for that, I think, is powerful for schools. So I think you'll see, certainly from our point of view, those are some of the, alongside AI, we spoke about that already, that's a given. You'll see us start to move into those other periphery areas that schools need to manage, probably a little bit more on that sort of, how do we help you be a sustainable school? You know.
Wow, and that's that's so much to take in from that perspective, but I quite like it. One thing though, so we talked about the sort of size of MIS and stuff. So that's increasing the size of your proposition, or do you see it more that actually it's just adding the extra value onto each of the different elements?
Yeah, Compass has always taken quite a modular approach to things.
Okay.
So I think for a lot of these, that they will be modules. Schools can, again, choice. Schools can choose them or not. If it's not right for them, that's absolutely fine. If they want to, that's all good. So, but yeah, I mean, yes, ultimately it does. It sort of broadens, and I think you'll see that it's been happening for many years. Suppliers, in not just in this industry, but any industry, where you've got a piece of critical software that sits at the heart of a thing, logically you want to then try and grow it out, and there's reasons for that. One is it gives you more things you can do as a business and allows you to have a bigger footprint. But actually, I think from a customer's point of view, the core story there is kind of bring things together, consolidate, keep your data in one place, make it all talk to each other really nicely. it's all of those things. And every school, every MAT will have its own sweet spot on that spectrum between very, not fragmented per se, but systems that are each and of themselves from different vendors, best in breed type stuff. So you might have 30 different applications, each do something really specific, through to other schools that say, actually, I don't want to manage 30 people, I want to manage one. And I'll accept that you do things your way, and there's a degree of fitting to that process.
Yeah.
Because if you go best of breed, you have infinite choice. If you go kind of more one-stop shoppy, you've arguably a little bit less choice. So every school has a space on that spectrum that is right for them.
Yeah.
I think the challenge for vendors like us and Compass is to try and be as broad on that spectrum as we can, to say, okay, if you're at that end of the spectrum, here's how we would work with you. If you're at that end of the spectrum, here's how we'd work with you. And
Yeah.
to have an answer for as much of that as is possible, I think is again going to be a focus for us. And that comes down to being flexible with the commercial offering, flexible with the tech, flexible with the services that go with it, flexible with how data comes in and out. Like if you want to take our data and put it into something else, great, go for it. It's an API. Take it. It's your data. Do with it what you like. But also saying, well, actually, if you bring that into us, we can do something clever with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So ultimately, if I was going to summarize, you're going to automate more processes. You're going to focus heavily on behavior and well-being to make sure that basically you're not just for pupils, but also for teachers and so on as well. So that helps with the retention of teachers as much as it does potentially of bringing teachers into that school as well. Because if they feel like the environment they're going to come into is really positive, then ultimately more teachers are going to want to come to your school.
Yeah, and school is a community, isn't it? You know, it takes everyone in that community to be in a positive space for amazing things to happen, and that's what we're there for.
Yeah, amazing. No, I love it. Absolutely love it. And what would you, so with a prospective customer, so what would you ask them to do if they were basically that now they've decided that they want to think about changing their MIS?
Yep.
What would you like them to actively do to basically consider Compass as well?
But talk to us would be step one. Reach out, let us know that you're there and that you're thinking about your options. You've mentioned G Cloud and everything ICT. There's other frameworks out there as well. So we're on those. You know, you can find us. Compass.education is our website. So reach out, get in touch. We would love to talk to you. We are a company of talkers. So if you phone us or you reach out, you'll get a meeting, you'll get a demo. We'll come and see you. We'll sit down with you. We'll talk to you. So we'd love to do that. And I think, you know, be prepared to talk about your problems, you know, the challenges that you face, because moving an MIS, as we said right at the start, there's a whole list of things that an MIS needs to do, and we all do it. We all have our version, various flavors of it, and that's fine, but we all do it. What we really want to understand is what's unique for your school. What are the unique challenges and things that are going to help you be a better school in 6 or 12 months than you are now? What's that stuff that we can help you with, because that's where really exciting conversations happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think if I was any advice to any school now, or any MAT or anybody else going out, you know, really do, and before even going out and speaking to anybody, first of all, think about what actually is, rather than just sort of going, I just need a replacement, because that's just, you know, at the end of the day, like you say, everybody can do that. You can find it, or everybody on the G Cloud, and you can make a decision. But before you even start that, think about all the problems you have and all the pain points that you want to solve, and then reach out to the different companies to sort of see who is best going to solve those.
And I think, and it's about having I guess what you might deem a future-looking procurement, not an immediate procurement, because an immediate procurement will focus on tech specs. It will focus on, these are the tasks we do right now.
Yeah.
How does your platform do them? And that is perfectly fine, by the way. That is a really important part of procuring a platform. You should definitely do that, but don't miss out on and here's the things we might want to be doing in 6 months or a year, or actually this is our school's vision for where we're going to take it. Are we going to grow? Are we going to expand? Are we going to open a nursery? Are we going to become a forest school or a scouting school, or like what is our thing and how might you help us do that? Don't miss that bit.
Totally agree, 100%. And actually, I suppose that comes back to finding the right partner that will grow with you. In essence, because sometimes it doesn't actually, you don't, as a supplier, you don't have to have everything ready now today.
No.
But you're right, there is an element when, as the sort of map goes, we plan to have 6 more schools, we plan to, work in deprived areas. How are you going to help us support get to that point?
And I would encourage schools to be bold with that as well. So I think you're absolutely right. Even schools that we've onboarded where we've had modules ready to go for them, it's a change management thing. There's only so much change a school is able to cope with, understandably. So even then it's a phased rollout quite often. That's fine. So I would encourage schools to, when you're speaking to vendors, ask them about what is their investment strategy. How are they investing in their product and in their platform? Because if you can't be confident that there is investment going into the platform, well, the platform's not going to grow. And therefore, by default, actually, it will go backwards. Because if it's not getting investment, the rest of the market will move forward and you'll be potentially feeling a bit stuck again with a bit of tech that just can't do what you want because there's not the investment in it. So whoever you're speaking to, definitely ask them those questions. Well, how are you funding your future roadmap? What is the size of your development team? How do you deploy them? What are they working on? What's coming up? Those things, because you're buying a little share of that company. You're buying your little space of it when you commit to them, because you're not going to switch in 6 months. You're not going to switch in a year. You might not even switch for 5 years.
Yeah.
It's a genuine partnership. Anything that long, it has to be a partnership. So yeah, ask those questions.
So potentially engage with you guys now, even if the contract's not due to be changed in a couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And you never know what ideas it might spark. We and other vendors as well. We speak to lots of schools, and when we have a global perspective, that's slightly unique to us. So we can bring those ideas of what's happening in Oz and over and stuff over there. Some really interesting things, different education system, but some really interesting learnings. Just chat. We're always happy to chat. Reach out. We'll say hi. We're hopefully a friendly bunch.
Amazing. Can I just say a big thank you again? I know you're a really busy person, and it's always good to have, like I say, the sort of the leaders of the companies coming on, because it gives that perspective of the vision of where you're wanting to go to and what you believe that the company, what the why of the company is. So it's always interesting to understand. So again, really thank you for your time, and it's a pleasure to have you on board.
Well, my first fireside chat, it was lovely. Thank you. Hopefully not my last. Hopefully you'll have me back again at some point. But yeah, great to chat.
Well, I definitely want to talk about the AI stuff in the future for sure. Cool. Take care, Pete.
Thanks,
Thank
Dave.
you.